Welcome to Thinker's Point. And this issue, we're going to discuss some very interesting issues like Iran, Ukraine, and the bilateral relationship between China and Russia. We have two very distinguished guests for this show. First, let me introduce the two gentlemen to our audience. Mr. Andrei Baikov is a professor and vice rector for research of the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. And his expertise in Eurasian strategy and international relations, especially integration design. Our second guest is also Andrei Susan Zoff, and he's the Dean of School of International Relations from same university. And he's specialized in conflict resolution and security studies, and with deep focus on the roots of international conflict and strategic games the national players play in security and securing their interest. Welcome, two gentlemen. And we know that we're in a world with very fast changes, a great uncertainty, largely because what the Westerners call resting ball politics. We know that the self-claimed genius, Donald Trump, has been doing as much as he can to destroy the so-called transatlantic bridge and the so-called free international order based on this transatlantic bridge. Given that, we want our two gentlemen to let us know their thinking and the insight from Russia's perspective, first and foremost, of course, on this war on Iran. We know that the United States and Israel together attack Iran, violate the sovereignty and the territorial integrity, and most brutally, they just assassinated the supreme leader in a very brutal way, which is, in my view, violate all the international laws. And of course, we know that Russia has made it clear Russia is standing by the side of Iranians. And first, let me ask Rector Baikov, what's your view on this war and its impact for the future?
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be able to offer our perspective on these critical issues. This war is, by all means, unprecedented. Mm-hmm. It has indeed broken some international rules and norms that has been unthinkable to imagine. Yeah. As killing the supreme leader, it's in breach of everything we know which supports the international order as we know it. And it is indeed reckless and adventurous, and some might say it's blunderous and completely wrong-headed. But it does fit into a certain strategy. We have to admit that. Maybe the way it comes across is too shocking, but strategically thinking, it's pretty much in the vein of what the United States has been doing. And they've just started to do it in a more resolute way, in a sense. They're just precipitating the events of destroying, by their own intention, the existing international order, which is not to their benefit at the moment, and they can see it, they can feel it, and they want to destroy the remnants of this order, to redesign it, as they see fit.
To restructure America's terms.
Yes, to restructure it. So if you look at it from different theoretical perspectives, you can find logic in what they're doing. They want geo-economically to make it extremely difficult for China to continue its impressive rise. They want to show that they have this strong affinity and loyalty to their allies in the region, and they're ready to resort to any means necessary, even to almost the last resort means, just not quite, but still, in making sure that they are the actual leader and the hegemon. And if they want to restructure the world order, they will do it. And of course, Trump is also playing a certain domestic political game.
Yes.
He wants to be strong. He wants to show that he is resolute and decisive. And he wants to remind all other contenders in this struggle for who will be the architect of the new order, who can make the rules, who can write the rules, and who does not shy away from the most decisive action.
But like you just said, this war is really reckless, because if you want to have war like at this scale, like this, you have to have a very clear-cut objectives, what you want to do. You have to have a strategy, and you have to have enough ammunition to sustain the war. And most of all, you have to have a plan B. What if the war is not going as you designed? What's going? But Donald Trump has none of all of this. No clear-cut objectives. Regime change or destroy Iranian's military capability, keep changing. And no long-term strategy. That's Americans themselves said. He doesn't have a strategy.
That's right.
And doesn't have a plan B. And if we compare the three wars, including this one, United States has started in this century. In Afghanistan was over 5 battle groups with cooperation of NATO, over 1,200 airplanes. With war in Iraq, 6 battle groups, also with cooperation of NATO, over 14 airplanes. But this time they barely have 2 battle groups, and without NATO's participation at all. Plus Israel is less than 400 airplanes, and attack such a much bigger power. Iran is reckless.
It is reckless.
So what's your view on this? You said he has a purpose about this. And also we know that U.S. economy is not doing very well. And foreign policy just said the top risk, in the top 10 risks, the number 1 is economic meltdown. And Ian Bremmer, who is a Eurasian group's head, he also said that the top 10 risk in 2026 for the United States, the first one is the internal revolution. I asked him, what do you mean by internal revolution? He said internal turmoil. But he doesn't want. So with all of the Epstein file is also catching up. And also Supreme Court's, a judgment that his tariff that is without support of the law. So all of this is in hot water. So there's argument that maybe he launches war to distract some internal challenges of internal politics. All of this, but it's just beyond me why he wants this war. Maybe you can provide some of your view, your insight on this.
It looks like they didn't plan it for to be a long military campaign that would take more than 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And it looks like they are currently in a state of uncertainty, not yet panic, but still it looks like they're reconfiguring the initial plan of this operation. Donald Trump and the United States generally quite sensitive to the losses on the American side. They're not that much sensitive to the losses of the adversarial side, but on their own side they are very sensitive. And they didn't have a plan B. I don't think that they're in a full coordination with Israel regarding the targets of this operation. And they for sure were not prepared that Iran would be as stubborn as it is now. And it looks like that the economy of this military campaign is in favor of Iran. And if its military operations can proceed at this tempo, it will be a very significant humiliation to the United States. Iran, of course, is suffering. It has lost its supreme leader. It is losing some of the significant capabilities, not only military but civil. But Iran is a great nation, 85 million people. It is a very significant regional player, and the United States are not capable without land intervention, which they are not intending to do.
Yeah.
And actually, I think, cannot do. The Iraq example is very clear, and the Afghanistan example is very clear. How significant and costly it can be. And in this respect, I just don't see a way for the United States to impose on Iran something that they can call a victory. On the other side, Iran can actually say that we are now having the initiative. We are now, providing the tempo of this military operation, and with our cheap but very effective military solution that we currently have, those drones and rockets they have developed for several decades, they can inflict very significant and very painful costs And maybe in the best interest of Iran is to make them understand how costly it can be.
It is already been very costly.
Absolutely, and because all the time resort to a military tool, as if like it's the only tool possible in negotiations with Iran, is absolutely unacceptable. And by the rhetoric of the United States and Israel, by the change in positions, by the changing of the goal of military operation, we can see that they are trying to figure out what is the minimum that we can call a victory. And it very much looks like Winston Churchill remarks on the fields of his project of a speech in a parliament, where he noticed to himself that this argument is quite weak. I need to strengthen it by my high voice.
Yes, and we know that rationally speaking, the sooner United States can get out of this hole, the better. And just like last time, the three sides all declare victory: Israelis and Americans, Iranians also. We won and just get out. But right now, the situation, in my view, is a little bit different, because we see that Iranians obviously hold no back this time. They really go all out and not only attack Israelis and Americans, but also attack all the military bases in the Middle East, involve almost everyone in the Gulf region, which is obviously the war is being escalated into a regional one, not just between Iran, Israel, and America, it's between Iran and all that. So this is there is a danger of further escalation, and we also know that all the strategic thinkers who have come out, I mean, American strategic thinkers that I know, like Robert Kagan, Stephen Maud, Mitch Miller, and so on, every one of them said this is a bad war for the United States. They are very negative, very critical towards President Donald Trump. And the former Secretary of State, Blinken, openly said that we don't have that much of bombs, 4 weeks maximum. So it's very critical. So the signal we got from the Trump administration is also very confusing. He said that we are thinking about getting out of it. We have achieved our goals. And on the other hand, he said we're going to, step up his attack. So we don't know. But my thinking, of course, is that he should get out as soon as possible. And it seems like from what Rubio said, Kayan said, is that they said our goal is to destroy the military capability. We've done that, and looks like they're preparing to get out. But this time, Iranians are, of course, more resolute to achieve what they want. In that regard, we know that President Putin has made it clear that Russians are on the Iranian side, and also provide some intelligence to the Iranians. So what's Russia's position? How, from your perspective, how this war should end? In what terms? And what's Russia's thinking or positions in this conflict?
Well, just coming back one step on what the America's end game here is. It's quite clear that it's going badly for them at the moment.
Yeah, very badly. Yes.
But they're very unlikely to allow it to destroy their reputation completely as a hegemon in the international order. So they will step up, just not necessarily in the military sense, but they're pretty likely to toughen up on Iran after the combat phase of the operation. So I'm pretty sure that they will be bent on not allowing Iran to develop technologically or economically for the years ahead, because they never take humiliation well. And it's very likely to be a humiliation scenario for the United States military. So it's going to anger up the United States pretty bad. But Russia, I think, is looking at it in a very concerned way. Russia will intensify coordination with China as to how we can support Iran in non-military ways. And I'm pretty sure they're going to include Iran post-military phase in all sorts of economic coordination and try to step up the formal coordination mechanisms on the basis of BRICS and SCO, objectively different geopolitical leanings. So it's also a very profound lesson for institutional building. How you make a working institution. You have to take into account geopolitical leanings of the countries, because you have to provide for different scenarios, including this one. No one could envisage it, but it happened just within a year or 2 years after the extension of the membership.
Yes, exactly.
So it does say a lot about how this new parallel institutional order should be built.
Exactly.
You cannot just expand it to include all countries you want, because otherwise you risk showing its incapacity to act unanimously on critical issues.
I think I agree with you that, in my view, United States of America has already been humiliated so far. It's how much humiliation they can endure. Another issue related to that is that we know that almost 80% of oil producing Gulf area is shipped out through Hormuz Strait. And Iran obviously has choked it. And this has enormous impact in the global economy, especially in the Far East, like Russia, Korea, even China, Taiwan, all of this very much dependent on the oil supply from that region, and also India, of course. And from that point of view, to what extent you think this will can impact on our economy, especially in Asia Pacific, which very much dependent on the oil shipped out of Hormuz? From Russia's perspective, of course.
Americans were trying to find a way to describe this as a victory, and they at some point dropped an argument that they would eventually control the Iranian oil, because it's clear that it's not reachable. And it also is not achievable opportunity for them to affect events in a way that would prevent Iran from controlling Hormuz Strait, because those cheap drones, even without any military fleet, can still reach any tanker in the Hormuz Strait. Iranian drones that can reach up to 2,000 kilometers up to Cyprus, basically. Hormuz Strait, but also Suez Canal, and also Red Sea. Everything in the East Mediterranean they can reach, and they can pose significant risks to any type of civil or military naval travel there. This implies that any settlement of this matter would exclude basically a risk-averse situation for any oil tanker trafficking in the Hormuz Strait. And this market would become a risky market. It had been a premium market for several decades. Nobody expected since the end of the 80s, basically, that such an occurrence would re-emerge. You remember that 1987, when the American tanker under the American flag was hit by the Iranian Navy. And now this trend, this scenario resurfaces, and this means that the oil from this market would be considered not a premium but a riskier. Insurance would go up, and probably long-term contracts would not be available anymore. There would be, like, every shipment would be considered in part that there is an opportunity for it not to reach a destination. And of course it complicates already very strained energy market. On the planet. 90% of the oil and gas of the region comes to Asia. India, China, Korea, Japan, major consumers. And it's clear that Americans could not control the development of the situation, even though they would like to put pressure on China and on some other allies that basically Japan, Korea, and India are considered to be in partnership with the United States, but in a way that the United States wanted them to feel that we are provider of security for your shipments of energy, and we can control the energy flow to China also, and we will send a signal to China. But now we see that they are not.
No.
They are not controlling. They can start a war that they cannot finish with a face-saving grace, claiming it a victory. And of course it poses, in Russian view, it poses significant risks. It also puts more imbalances to the energy markets that in the short term benefits Russia, I would state it clearly, because Russia is a major oil producer and exporter, and you know that European powers have been very unwise, I would put it mildly, in trying to pursue and prosecute basically a Russian oil tanker fleet, shadow fleet as they call it, even though international law doesn't know this term. And they are detaining Russian tankers. They are supporting Ukraine that is attacking Russian tankers. And you know, Russia has last week lost one of its liquid gas tankers in the Mediterranean. That is a significant loss, not only for Russia actually, but for energy markets, because the supplier would not get a gas, the buyer would not get a gas in a moment when it's most necessarily needed. And this drives all of the prices very high.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the Western market, like I said, is already in turmoil. The oil prices shoot up to as much as $110. And we know that United States economy is extremely sensitive to the oil price.
China is much more prepared to this. You made your reserves.
China has a backup of Russia. Russia is really backup China, and China has a long-term reservation. You know, my friends in America said the inflation going up. We know every penny increase of price at the gas station would double show in the supermarket. So I think Donald Trump really shot himself in his own foot. But back into you, I think that Ukrainians did a very below the belt hit about the, you know, sink the gas. I think it's just really anti-human because people need this. And this leads out to another issue, that is Ukraine war. We know that Russia is taking offensive. Russia is the upper hand, doing very well. And so therefore, our Chinese audience, and including myself, really want to know what's the end game for this Eurasian war, given that advantage Russians hold. Everybody knows that Zelensky is a loser, and I think he should be crying right now because this war in Iran is all bad news for Ukrainians, right? Less ammunition over there, less attention, and less weapon supplies, and so on and so forth. And he's under double pressure from not only from Russia but from Donald Trump, and also Europeans also in a kind of very chaotic situation. Given all of that, what's Russians thinking also about Eurasian war? We know that my good friend Sergei Garganov published a long article a few years ago in the Russian Global Affairs. He said the war in Ukraine is not to defeat Ukraine. That's not the case. It's to an onslaught led by Russians against the Western international order, because that order has become an instrument for the United States to sustain its hegemony on the one hand, on the other hand, to weaken Slavic nations. So that's why we have to do away with this international order dominated by the Westerners. Is that the final goal, or is that achievable first? And second, what's exactly the end game for Moscow for this war, this conflict in Ukraine? Of course, we know there are two narratives about this. We don't want to get into that. Because one narrative is the Western narrative, this invasion started in 2022, but we know that this was started a long time ago. It's a result of enlargement or expansion of NATO. Actually started after Maidan Square Revolution in 2014, right? That's how it started. It started actually by Ukrainians that attacked the Russian people in so-called Ukraine. And of course, we don't want to get into that. My question is that, from your perspective, what is the best way, the most rational way to end this conflict, which has been really a tragedy so far, in my view?
Right. Well, it's a really complicated issue and very many layers of how to explain it and to account for the internal dynamics of the war. But right now, the logic of the conflict is changing quite dramatically. It's no longer the war of attrition. It's not as one-sided as it used to be. Now, with this Iran situation, which caused a lot of energy uncertainty in Europe and distraction of attention of the United States, it's really altering the way the conflict operates right now, and gives us the upper hand in terms of the initiative on the battlefield, but also in terms of the initiative of the final settlement. So we are basically now waiting for the situation to stabilize, to demonstrate to everyone that the terms that we offer as the best conditions for the settlement are without an alternative. And it's just a matter of some time when this realization comes to all the partners, but I don't see how the situation can change much. So in the longer run, the conflict is pretty much over, in the sense that nothing drastic can happen in the conflict to change the current advantage that Russia possesses. So de facto, there is a control of the territory and of the situation that is very unlikely to change. The question is how it will play out de jure in terms of the legal formalization. Here, lots of different scenarios can be envisaged, but none of them is likely to hurt Russia much in terms of how we're going to manage it. But Ukraine is definitely the losing side here because it's losing support.
Yes.
The objective support needed from the European and American allies, because the attention is refocused. It's clearly elsewhere. And there is increasing Ukraine fatigue more than a year ago, more than 2 years ago. Now I think it is at its peak at the moment, which contributes to a speedy settlement.
So you think the settlement would be?
It will be. It'll be more
a little bit detail.
Yes, it'll be more of an actual than of a legal nature. So there'll be a stage of the freezing of the current situation, with the negotiating sides trying to find the right legal formula. This can take some time, because the core issue of the territories and of the countries willing to legally recognize the territories. It will not be a uniform front in the West. There will be different coalitions in the West as to how to treat the legal status of certain territories. But the actual recognition will be there. So I think it's already there.
So reality of 25% of the former territory now goes into Russia.
I think the reality is already accepted.
Institutionalized neutrality of Ukraine, never join the NATO. Something like that.
I think the American position is vital here, and I think they have already formed their position.
How about Europeans' position, or you don't give any?
The European position is important, because the European position affects how Ukrainians feel about the conflict. And I think they're ready to somehow involve them in the European integration area, so much as it can help reconstruct Ukraine and help them revitalize their economy. But again, there'll be much coordination between NATO and the EU as to the bringing Ukraine into the European structures. So there has to be some kind of harmony between the American and European interests. It's not yet there, so until there is this harmony of interests on the Ukrainian issue between Washington and Brussels, Ukraine is unlikely to get membership even to the EU. And for the moment, they don't really see eye to eye with each other on Ukraine.
The history tells us that twice Russians play an essential, even decisive role in reshaping the European politics, the geopolitics. Once in Napoleon and Hitler. And I would argue this is the third time Russia again will play a very important, essential role in reshaping the European geopolitics, especially given the position of Europe right now. I always argue their problem is one word: fragmentation. They don't know what they want, right? And so from that point of view, perspective, what's your view that what kind of Europe politics or geopolitics there would be in terms of strategic destination, or in terms of institution buildings and so forth? Because I do believe that this is a very important moment in the history that Russia again will play an essential role for the future of the entire Europe continent geopolitics. I don't know if you agree with that, but what's your view on this?
I think Europeans have lost an opportunity to build a unified, solid entity in the early 90s, where there was a discussion about the confederation, possible confederation.
Yeah.
They voted twice against the European Constitution in Netherlands and France in the like 20 years ago already. And it's not clear whether this vote, if it would be prolonged right now, would be a positive one for the constitution. The fact that the only idea they can find unity, a platform for unity, is an idea of hostility toward enemy to the east, basically to Russia.
Yeah.
Very archetypical threat that is more psychological than, strategical, I would say. European foreign policy is currently hijacked by nations with anti-Russian agenda, and this agenda is not shared by, say, Italy, Portugal, or Greece.
Or Spain.
Well, Spain, for some reason, they are pretty hostile, even though it's really not clear for me what exactly Russia is doing to them to make them feel so hard about Russia. But it's clear that you're right, and fragmentation is a key scene of European integration, of this European project. And now Americans are very critical to this European project. They want Europe to be a Europe of nations. They like Europe so much, they want it to be multiple, to have many of it. And it's not clear how exactly it would develop. We know that Germany is the most export-oriented economy in the EU, so it does need European Union as a market, as an entity. But the burden of the high energy prices, strategic instability to the east, and military dependency on the United States still. Germany is an occupied country, basically. It doesn't have that much of a foreign policy independence. It has hard time formulating a position on Iran currently. We see that the government tries to navigate between its pro-American, pro-Israeli stance and very critical sentiment in society about what Americans are doing. Spain, for example, very clearly states that this aggression against Iran is a mistake. Prime Minister Sanchez said that this is how historical mistakes been made. So he didn't he used those strong words. And there are people in Moscow who believe that this Ukraine crisis development, current stage of it, is very much favorable to Moscow, and Moscow is, in some extent, even see some positive things, having Zelensky as a president, because he's prolonging this crisis in a way that hurts Ukrainian and European interests.
Yeah. His own survival hinges on the war.
Yes, and it also places Russia in a good comparison with the United States regarding Iran. So Russia is conducting this special military operation. It's not a war, actually, not legally a war, not in the nature it's a war. Kyiv is a very peaceful city.
Special military operation.
It holds, international summits. Leader of nation, when he was legitimate, Zelensky, he's safely traveling inside the country and outside the country.
Yeah.
And I think the Ukrainian crisis, it is in the last, half or last part of this. It is an end game of the crisis. Yeah. And the cruel side of it is actually that Ukrainian government is not working to defend Ukrainian national interests, but working to defend their own personal survivability.
Yes.
When they got pressed from all sides, Russians, Americans, Europeans, we have in Russia a special media project of two prankers who are calling to different political leaders and make them state clearly and sincerely what do they actually think. Not political statements that are formal and obligatory in some way, but what they actually think about things. And all the time they call to European politicians, they got a unique response, like they are tired of Ukraine, Zelensky is manipulating European assistance. All they do is just trying to get more money from Europeans.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bronze boat of money being, sent to Ukraine, and in Monaco, in great European tourist cities, you see cars with Ukrainian plates now, with large amounts. And we understand that corruption is rampant there.
Yeah.
So all of this is very indicative, and I think it's a formative experience also for Europeans. What does this Ukrainian political class mean for them?
Yeah, and we know that just a few days ago, Orban, Hungary, just stopped a cash vehicle. That is quite interesting to watch. Europeans are just silent on this. I can share one story, a personal story to you about how hypocritic European is. I was in London a year ago, and of course, Europeans, I was attacked. Say China is on Russia's side, blah, blah, blah. I said, no one can be more hypocritical than British. And Zelensky has been in London 3 times, visit London. When did Ukraine's ambassador to England come out to meet his leader? None. And they're all quiet. They know what I meant, We know who's the Ukraine ambassador to London. And usually when your leader come to the town, you should be the first in the line in the airport to see your president, Zelensky.
Of course.
But it's nowhere. He's nowhere. And of course, he's a plan B, right? And all the audience, including this, shut up. I said 3 times Zelensky has been in London. We don't see any show of Ukraine ambassador in London as a former chief of command. Of course, that tells you that Europeans are very hypocritic on this. But here I want to push 2 of you a little bit more. So exactly what do you want? We have 2 arguments, 2 views, which are sharply different from each other. One said that after the war, Ukraine, the conflict, for long-term interest, prosperous and stable Europe is good for Russia's interests, because at the end of the day, Russia's economy, Russia's politics and society still want to have a close relationship with Europe, either economically, socially, or culturally. You're part of it. But there's another view shared, for example, my good friends again, Sergei Garganov. They don't give a damn. They said, we want Europe to go down, even to the extent the EU will collapse. And so the Europe already under double damage. One damage is by Donald Trump. The transatlantic bridge, the so-called United States-Europe alliance, is under destruction from Munich Security Conference by Donald Trump. Another damage, of course, is by Ukraine war. They're really, really bleeding all the time, especially Germany, deindustrialization, because I think they are stupid enough to cut off all the energy supply, which destroys a lot the industrial base of Germany, which is a powerhouse. So which view you think is fit Russia's interest? Is after the peace, it's a prosperous, stable Europe is good for Russia, or if Russia really want to reshape so-called European politics, they want Europe to start from scratch. Which one?
Well, I don't think Russia wants Europe to go down. I don't think so. I think the Russian establishment distinguishes very sharply between the European elites and European countries and peoples.
Okay.
And there is a lot of affinity towards the European culture, of which Russia is a part. And there is a lot of demand for the resumption of scientific collaboration and knowledge exchange. And that is there. And that is in the interest of the entire humanity, so to speak. But of course, the nature of the Russian political relationship with Europe will be completely different.
Yes.
Because we have accumulated a very positive experience of dealing with the East and with the world at large, thanks in a way to this crisis.
Yep.
And we've learned how to deal with the East, because unfortunately our foreign economic and political strategy was very lopsided towards the West, and we didn't know how to deal with the East, and we didn't want to learn.
Yeah.
Now we know how to do it effectively, and we are not going to give up on that. We will keep and we will advance our cooperation with the East. And Europe will be needed in the moments where it is actually in our interests, and it will serve the interests of humanity. I think it will mostly about science and knowledge, because that's where we shouldn't really recognize the boundaries, especially in basic research.
Yes.
That's for the to resolve the pressing issues of the day of global human race, as well of global civilization, which is interconnected by nature, regardless of what the elites think. We do have problems that have to be solved. But politically, we'll be very cautious, because many people were deeply offended. I'm here speaking on behalf of universities, for example, when many cooperative projects were severed overnight without any plausible explanation, and human relationships were affected in a very deep way. And this cannot be just forgotten, put aside. I think this will leave a lasting legacy. So we will not agree to be dictated again the terms of cooperation, how they want. It will be mostly led by the Russian side this time around.
Yeah, and like I said in my class, if you compare two wars, the war in Middle East and the war in Ukraine, you can say Russians are a lot more civilized.
Absolutely.
Right? It's has a kind of honor. I think Russians have a sense of honor. This is what we do, even in the fight. If you look at what the American Israeli did to Iranians, and the Gaza is horrible. So in that regard, I think nothing can be more hypocritical than Europeans regarding two wars. And here, when I was in Berlin last October, they said, okay, China needs to help to broker peace and so on and so forth. Europeans. I was very clear. I said, look, you have a very strong attitude. You're very emotional on Ukraine war. But Europeans, you don't have a clear-cut position. You have a lot of demands and preferences, but so far you haven't worked out a clearly defined policy yet. So you don't have a position, but a strong attitude. You don't have a policy, you have a lot of demands. Who can work with you? Basically, I said that you have to come back, sit down, work out a plan, a feasible plan, and put on table so people can talk to you. But they don't have it. They don't have a lot of voices.
That's right.
And they also mentioned about Russia-China relationship. My argument is that a good Russian-China relationship actually is constructive, helpful for peace in Europe, even to settle this conflict, unfortunately. And this comes to the last issue I want to discuss with you two distinguished gentlemen here. That is, we know that 2 days ago at the press conference, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi made it very clear that the relationship between Russia and China is solid, and the strategic partnership or coordination is very effective. He said, let me quote, he said, the stability of Russian-China relationship anchors the global peace and stability. Basically, as long as the two great powers relationship maintains stable, as long as the two sides want peace and stability, the world peace and stability can be guaranteed, because after all, Russia and China will cover over 70% of those face on us, and the entire old world. America is an island, right? It's this part, if Russia and China can stand firm, the situation is manageable at least. So what's your view about the Russian-China relationship from your perspective? Where do you see the challenges? Where do you see we need to improve? Or how strong this relationship should be and can be and is right now? Because we know that there's another guy called United States of America. It's a trilateral game in which, it's my view, as long as Russia and China can stand firm together, situation is manageable, including the United States. Because last time when Sergei Garganov was here, we discussed a lot about how to manage, help United States to prevent disorderly decline, because that is not good for all of us. So I really want to hear too from from two of you. How do you think about the bilateral relationship between two great countries, Russia and China?
That's a great question, and that's why we're here, because we as experts are trying to support this process from the expert community, because it creates trust, and it creates an epistemic community of consensus that we can then send to the level of decision makers. That's extremely important, so we're very hopeful that this cooperation with our partners here in China will help this process along. Now, Russia and China partnership is a really unique mix of traditional politics and new politics. It's the politics of nation states, but it's also politics of civilizational states.
Yes.
And civilizational states are different in the sense that they have a mission, and they are not constrained by short-term policy planning. They think about the future of nations, peoples, cultures that depend on peace to thrive, to flourish. They think about harmony, they think about cohabitation. It's less strategic, less pragmatic in the business kind of way. It's more about development or co-development, and that's very important. And Russia and China represent this kind of vision, which is about harmonious cohabitation, which is about respect. We respect each other. That's the culture of interstate relations that's forgotten in Europe, in the West, which has become not just fragmented, it's become polarized. Values drive nations apart, but they should bring them together.
Exactly.
Right? It's a completely different perspective. Also, Russia and China are two important pillars that stick Eurasia together. And Eurasia is the objective geopolitical counterbalancing pillar of the international order, which balances the United States, balances the Euro-Atlantic community. And without a strong nexus between Russia and China, the world as a geopolitical reality cannot be balanced. So they have to stick together, and they have a lot to bring to the table of this cooperation. They have theoretical depth, they have strategic experience, institutional patience, the experience of like cultural governance, which I think is a specific characteristic of China's worldview and China's School of International Relations also. So it does offer an alternative, and it seems to be quite appealing to other countries. They look to Russia and China, and they look at the model of their cooperation as a model for the international order that can be built, in fact.
The model of partnership.
Yes.
And the great.
So we work not through some great theoretical justification, but just we lead by example of our good bilateral relationship.
Yeah, if you look at the entire world picture, I always argue there's a fundamental change after industrialization. After industrialization, all the so-called major powers, big powers in the Atlantic area. But nowadays, you look around, the only major power come from West is the United States. China, Russia, India, all from the global south, all from this non-West countries, which is structure change. And more importantly, among those major powers, non-Western major powers, we already have two organizations, Shanghai Organization and the BRICS, which are a very good platform to talk to each other. So I know you're expert in institution buildings. In the long run, we have two so-called communities, which together, two sub-communities. One is the Eurasian community, another Asian Pacific. But altogether, if China and Russia can work together, we can bring them all into one.
Absolutely.
In the grand, a bigger Eurasian community, which Shanghai organizations or BRICS will play a major role. From that point of view, how do you think that we should continue with Russians and Chinese or Indians also maybe play a very important role in bringing all us together? Because I always think that if you look at the history in the past 300 years, the driving force between the major powers in the past is conflict and war. That's why World War I, World War II, or the Cold War. But now the driving force between China, Russia, and other global South countries is cooperation.
Yes.
We never fight war against each other. We have Shanghai Organization. So that's very structure change, and it's a big. And I don't think this change is revocable. Is irrevocable. From that point of view, what's the future prospect from a Russian point of view of the global community, especially Eurasian community, should develop? What's the challenge, opportunities over there?
We should remember that Russia and China were the first one to formulate that multipolarity is the future of the world order.
Yeah.
It was our joint declaration in Moscow of 1997 that was framed as a new world order and multipolarity.
Yeah.
And what we managed to do in the last 30 years is not only to solve the border issue, demilitarize our joint border, but also provide joint security guarantees to the smaller nations in between, to Central Asian nations, to Mongolia. And that made this part of Eurasia very secure. Russia feels it in comparison to its western border, where we always have a security frontier with NATO. Like every election in Ukraine, in Moldova, in Belarus, even in Baltic states, they are on the brink of international political crisis, or on occasion a military crisis, because of this competition, security competition between Russia and the West. None of the elections in Central Asia or in Mongolia never have been, an international crisis between, say, Russia and China, or with anybody else involvement. And this, I think, is a great example of how our mutual reciprocity, political respect to one another, interest in and respect to the interest of one another, paves way to stability in this part of Eurasia. And as Andrei said, this can be a good example to other Eurasian nations that can see that a different model can exist, not one that is basically founded in the spreading of values that violate national interest of other states, that push them, that force them, that attack them on occasions, like the West does. But there is a different culture and different model based on respect of interest, based on the equality, based on the development and the cooperation as a key process. And what also is different in our partnership is that we do not consider that a type of a political structure inside a partner country matters for the sake of cooperation. It doesn't matter. You decide for yourself what type of political structure you have internally. We do not impose on you any prerequisites for this type of political structure that you would like to have. While the West always dictates what kind of policy, political structure, regime you need to have to be a partner, for us to recognize you as equal, for us to say that you have some future. And I think it's a weakness, cognitive weakness, value weakness that prevents them from seeing reality of the world that is very complex, very multipolar, and development of different civilizations, nations as civilizations. And I think both Russia and China can be described in this way. Also, India, Turkey, Iran in Eurasia, to say the least, those are the nations that have a lasting legacy of several thousand years and can be seen as nations with their own mission. And the future structure of Eurasia should be founded, of course, in the Russia-China partnership. We need to spread it. We need to involve other significant nations inside our partnership, and to present our partnership as the anchor, indeed, as the anchor of stability in the world. Because in comparison, we see that the West and the United States in particular, they're very active, they're aggressive, and they're imposing, they demand things from others. And this is the sign of a desperate strategy, desperate policies that lacking resource. And I'm sure that a comparison between us puts us in a favorable position.
Yes, I agree. I think that the overall trend or strategic trend of the global development is obvious. The United States and the entire West, collective West, is further weakened. Ukraine war and this Iranian war. That trend, in my view, is irrevocable. That gives a rise of a much more important role Russians and China have to play, not only to maintain peace and stability, but also reshape international order in the long run. But here's a question I have to ask you guys, because we know that in all those good trends, there's still a little challenge or trouble here. That is the Japanese right wing, especially after Sinai Takaichi become a prime minister. Is obviously there is a trend that not only Japan will have to, there is a trend of remilitarization and to violate all the post-war agreement, but also the challenge is not only China's sovereignty and territorial integrity by put his fingers in the Taiwan affairs, but also actually challenge the entire post-war order established together by the Russians, of course, and Chinese, and even Americans. So how do you see this kind of unnecessary, in my view, it's really counterproductive challenge from Sinai Takaichi's right wing? To what extent we should push it back? Because I think a peaceful Japan is very essential for stability and peace in the Eurasia Pacific. But this kind of counter-action or reactionary move, in my view, is not tolerable. So what's your view from Georgian perspective?
Well, I think to put it short, the best way to counter that is to demonstrate the unity of Russia and China. In the sense that they coordinate in the strategic sphere, in the defense sphere, in the military sphere. There does not have to be a formal alliance, but there has to be a clearly signaled resolute attitude to being able to govern the region in the interests of Russia and China, representing Eurasia at large.
Yes.
And I think we should activate the institutional framework that we have in place, including the Shanghai Security Organization, the community of these nations, because that will show the unity and the cohesion that we have, and that will be the best deterrent that we can have against any kind of resurgence that Japan might demonstrate.
Okay, do you have any point to add on this? Or
I wish wisdom to Japanese politicians to not to perceive themselves as an instrument of American strategy here.
yes,
Some of the nations in Eurasia and in Europe, they were very eagerly presenting themselves as an instrument of American strategy, and we see how difficult and actually devastating it is for them. The earliest case was Georgia on the Russian border.
2008, yes.
Yes, that actually provoked a war, killed a few Russian servicemen, and then was devastated by a war.
Yeah.
And they were proposed once again to become this instrument during this latest
Just like Ukraine under Zelensky.
stage of the Ukraine crisis, and the Georgian government is now discussing it publicly that we were proposed to open a second front.
Yeah.
And when we asked what exactly should we do on the second week of the war, the Westerners, they responded, you know what, we will send you humanitarian aid into the forests where you will hide. And that will be, a best case scenario for you in this crisis. So they understood eventually that they've been proposed to be basically an instrument, a hostile instrument of destabilization.
Yes.
And it's very devastating to national interests. And I wish many nations, including Japan, wisdom in understanding their own national interests vis-a-vis both China and Russia. And when a nation decides to become an instrument of other nation, it's always a very devastating experience. And as we say it in Russia, every nation is an experiment, a historical experiment.
Yes.
An experiment formed by positive and negative experiences. And a victory in a war, a defeat in a war, is also an experience. And Japan had, both of them, and hopefully the wisdom will prevail, and confrontation unnecessary, actually,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely unnecessary
Yeah,
confrontation.
yeah, it's not good for them either. Yeah, I agree with you that historical lessons have to be remembered. If not, then you may have to relearn it. In that regard, thank you very much. We at least we make it very clear here that is the relationship between Russia and China is very critical for maintaining peace and stability down the road, and it should be strengthened. And especially at a time that we have a lot of problems, a great uncertainty caused essentially by the collapse of transatlantic bridge on the one hand, and this very unpredictable transactional action by U.S. United States under Donald Trump, and of course a little bit Japan. So thank you so much.
Thank
you
you
very much. It's a great pleasure. Let's stay in touch.